Maybe it's just nostalgia, but anime like Your Lie in April, Clannad, Anohana, Your Name, A Silent Voice used to leave more of an emotional impact when you watch them. And somehow, modern day coming of age, slice of life romance anime just doesn't feel the same. And this feeling I'm talking about is a feeling of euphoria of sorts, a bittersweet feeling, a nostalgic, sad, but happy time. And the reason for this new wave or new gen modern day anime not being able to replicate the emotional impact of the older shows is that most of the shows nowadays are plot driven and not character focused. I feel like most of the shows tend to rely on their plot to carry the characters as opposed to the characters enhancing the plot. A very good example of this is the Call of the Night anime. The plot is what significantly carries the story. Not that I feel like the characters are bad written characters. I just feel like they're not as interesting as the older characters you would get like in an anime like Golden Time, for instance. And I really think it's that shift in being more plot driven than character focused that's probably reason number one. It almost acts as a blanket to the characters, almost doing almost all the heavy lifting. And I also do think the characters just aren't as relatable as the characters that were written back then. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like when you watch these characters, you can see yourself going through what they were going through back then. Now it almost feels unrealistic sometimes. I mean, I was watching, I don't remember the title of the anime, but I'm pretty sure this guy, he had just bought a robot. I don't know if it was like a robot girlfriend or maid or something. And basically, it's a romance anime about him falling in love with his robot. Honestly, it's it's something else. You can see what they were trying to do with the anime, but it just felt very weird and it just didn't hit the way they wanted it to, in my opinion. But I did see a lot of people enjoying the anime, so maybe it's just a me thing, but I just think a lot of the characters nowadays are just not relatable. Now, let's take it back to the Call of the Night anime I was talking about, for instance. I do think the whole not going to sleep aspect of it is relatable, but I just don't think I think where it loses us is where it starts bringing in the vampires and all this. If you just brought that sleeping aspect on its own, then I think it could have worked. But once you introduce a layer of vampires or the supernatural, then you're losing that relatability. But there is a way to achieve this, even with the vampires being an aspect of the story. I just don't think the story managed to pull that off. And that's why a show like Anohana, for instance, is more relatable in my opinion, because there's no outside interference towards the plot. The characters are just the central focus of the story, and the plot enhances who these characters are. And because of that, we just don't reach the same emotional heights. You never actually feel as sad as the anime is trying to make you feel. But back then, the moment they want you to be sad, you're gonna be sad, basically. And another reason is that I just feel like a lot of the stories nowadays are just not fun. And I know that just sounds like a cop-out answer, but I genuinely believe a lot of the stories nowadays are just not fun, almost boring, honestly. And that could be a dig at the story writing itself, but a lot of these are older manga just being adapted recently, so I don't know, maybe there's a problem with who's in charge of picking what to adapt, but I just feel like a lot of the stories they're choosing to adapt are just not fun or interesting enough for me to just watch. What older coming of age anime did right was that it used to feel a lot more relatable. For instance, I just talked about relatability just now, and yeah, the characters were just more relatable. Maybe it's because of the time when I had watched these, or the time majority of us had watched these. Some of us were still in high school, hadn't even graduated back then. So yeah, maybe that relatable aspect is being lost because of basically growing up. And apart from that, I feel like it never tried to sacrifice the plot for cheap plot points. Like love triangles never used to feel as pointless as they do nowadays. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of pointless love triangles even back then, but I feel like recently it's even worse. It's gotten even worse. But like I said, it could be an age factor, just not being able to relate to these characters and plot points. And I just generally feel like the world was basically a better place back then. Yeah, I'm not here to give some earthly speech about the times and whatnot, but genuinely, the world was a better place when we were watching these anime. There's a lot of nonsense going on nowadays, so that could be a very huge factor in why a lot of these shows are just not hitting the same way. And I do feel like I do feel like there is a very general change in just storytelling nowadays. And I covered an aspect of that in the character plot points argument I was making earlier, but I feel like there's been a real shift, and I'm gonna make a video about that just later on. But the point is, I feel like a lot of the older shows felt a lot more emotionally impactful than the recent new gen anime that have been coming out.